So one diplomat is missing a lot of action, but a former diplomat is in the thick of it. And that too at the age of 100. I'm talking about this man, Henry Kissinger. He is a former Secretary of State. He arrived in Beijing on Tuesday to meet Chinese officials. Many people were confused at first. They couldn't believe Kissinger was still alive. Look at what Chinese social media users were writing about this. Is this the Kissinger from the history books? I thought he was dead because people in the history books are. Well, to answer their question, yes, this is the Kissinger from China's history books. I wouldn't bet on their accuracy, though. Kissinger played a key role in establishing relations between the US and Communist China. Until the 1970s, none existed between the US and China. The US only recognized the regime in Taiwan. But in 1971, Henry Kissinger flew to Beijing. This was a top secret visit. He met with senior Chinese officials there. He also managed to get an invite for US President Richard Nixon. The next year, in 1972, Nixon traveled to Beijing, and that's how the US and Communist China established relations. Now back to the present. Kissinger had two important meetings in Beijing, one with Defense Minister Li Shangfu and the second with top diplomat Wang Yi. Now, since the foreign minister was missing, Kissinger was spared a third one. He's not in Beijing on any official mission, apparently. He's there as a private citizen, and the US has a history of doing this. They call it track 2 diplomacy. When the official channels fail, you turn to unofficial ones. Such attempts have been made with Russia as well. Retired State Department officials met Russia's foreign minister in April. That too was track 2. But does the White House know what Kissinger is up to? Here's what US officials said.
We were aware that Henry Kissinger was traveling to China. It actually came up in the meetings that Secretary Blinken had when we were in China. The Chinese officials mentioned that he was planning to come, as he has done a number of times over the years as a private citizen. I will say he was there under his own volition, not acting on behalf of the United States government, and I don't have any further updates on his trip.
So they very much knew. The White House says Kissinger usually debriefs after every visit, meaning he comes back and tells them what happened, what Chinese officials said, the sentiment in Beijing, all of it. So we can assume that he'll do the same this time. Meanwhile, the Chinese government has already released a statement. It covers Kissinger's talks with the defense minister, and this is what the American told them. I'm quoting, "History and practice have repeatedly proved that neither the US nor China can afford to treat the other as an adversary." Now listen to Li Shangfu's reply, the Chinese defense minister. This is what he said. "Some people in the United States did not meet China halfway, causing China-US relations to hover at the lowest point since the establishment of diplomatic relations." Wang Yi said something similar. He also added some sweet talk for the ex-diplomat. Listen to this. "US policy toward China requires Kissinger-style diplomatic wisdom and Nixon-style political courage." So you've heard the statements. Now let's understand what this visit is all about. In the past few weeks, top US leaders have made a beeline for China. Antony Blinken went first, then Janet Yellen. And now climate envoy John Kerry is in Beijing. China gave all of them a cold welcome. Before that, the defense minister refused to meet the Pentagon chief, Lloyd Austin, the same minister who just met Kissinger. So China was stonewalling the Americans. Washington kept trying to engage, but Beijing refused. Could Kissinger be trying to break this deadlock? Despite his age, he is the man for the job. The Chinese regime holds Kissinger in high regard. Look at these articles by their state media. Kissinger's pragmatism and rationality are what US lacks most today. At 100, Kissinger still razor sharp on China-US relations. This is what the Chinese press is saying, the state mouthpieces. China-US need a Kissinger now more than 50 years ago. This is China's state media for you. They specialize in insults and smear pieces. So coming from them, this praise tells a story. Kissinger has something in Beijing that Joe Biden's officials don't. Respect and trust. But will that be enough to repair the relationship? It's hard to say, because the China of today is not the China of 1971. It's a lot more aggressive and ambitious. Plus, the Kissinger of today is not the spring chicken of the 1970s. Most of the world considers him a war criminal. His influence within the State Department is virtually nil. So if Joe Biden is betting on a 100-year-old ex-diplomat to do the heavy lifting, good luck. Instead, he should ask himself two questions. Is China reciprocating his desire for engagement? From the looks of it, no. Do China's words of peace match its actions? Again, the answer is no. And I'm not saying stop engaging with China. Preventing a conflict should be the top priority. I'm saying limit your expectations. The China of the 1970s needed American help. The China of today needs America's downfall.